We need to turn a brass plug to keep gas from coming out of this hole. This is gonna be real simple. I'm just gonna measure the inner diameter of that plug. I'm gonna turn it down pretty close to that and then file a taper onto it. I don't think it's worth using the cross slide to taper it. The inner diameter here appears to be about 205 thousandths. I'll be using the Grizzly go752z to turn this down. I'm using 1/2 inch stock, so to get 200 thousandths, I'm going to take 300 thousandths off the outer diameter, and that should be about there. I'll be turning this at about 850 RPM. Zero the DRO, and I'm going to feed this in 15 thousandths, or I'll go 25 thousandths. And that's going to take a 50 thou cut on the brass, and the reason I'm going 25 and that's going to take 50 is because this DRO is telling you the exact amount the cross slide is actually feeding in, so you have to double that since you're working on a diameter. The auto feed really leaves a nice finish on that part. In this pass, I'm actually going to go 100 thousandths just because it's brass. You can really take a heavier cut. Just whenever you're using auto feed, it's kind of a tricky thing. You don't want to feed too fast, especially if you're taking heavier cuts. But slower, you can always go safer if you go slower. So if you're not really familiar with feeds and speeds, just run it slower and it should be fine. You don't need to be pushing it as hard as you can. At this point, I still should have 50 thousandths allowance, and it looks like I've got 52, 53, so that's great. I'm gonna take a 40 thousandths pass, which is 20 thou on the DRO. Especially when you're working with thinner and softer materials, it's always a good idea to take a free pass, which basically is gonna make sure everything is parallel, because once you start getting thinner, things can bend, you might have more tool deflection. So taking that free pass, you can actually hear it's taking a little bit of material off, which means there's a little bit of taper on the tip. For the most part, that looks pretty good. That's right where I want to be on the lathe, and then from there I'm going to file it, because I know that I'm about 205 thousandths. Right now I'm a few thousandths over that, and plastic has a lot of give into it, and we want this to be tight, so I don't want to take too much material. I'm just going to put a little bit of a taper on it with the file. It's always a good idea and a great rule of thumb to never be wearing rings when you're working around, especially machinery that's spinning like these big chucks. If this were to grab it, that'd be a bad scene. Test the fit before I part it off. Right now I'm actually at 310 thousandths, not 210, so I just need to take 100 thou off the diameter. Still a bit oversized, which is fine. That's kind of where I want it to be, so I'll probably take off maybe another 10 thou and it might fit. And that, I can feel, that's a nice tight fit. We'll deburr it and it'll be done. We'll put it in and take it for a test drive. Looks like the plug is holding pressure and there's no more leaks.